you build your characters, and then once we have your character, we'll figure out what your character is good at. We'll yeah. Well, we'll we will yeah we'll okay. Pre-drunk and post-drunk. Um, so yeah, so basically we'll get your characters worked out, and then we will find household positions that suit those characters. Yes, that's something that I have not really addressed in the videos yet, but I would say that if Taylor is going to be our noble, then it would be on Taylor to decide which house he shows fealty to. Yeah. So basically, just like any medieval society, there are certain houses that exist within the Changeling Society, and you would basically be a minor house that answers to one of the major houses. Yeah, well, yeah, they're each a bloodline, and there are Seelie and Unseelie within the house. Gwen, oh yeah, there are a lot of houses. Yeah, these are the ones that lead towards the Unseelie. Hmm. I'd have to look it up. It's been too long. It may be. Yeah, Baelor, marked by freakish Fomian blood. Uh, Fomorian, yeah. Yeah. It's worth having a further read up on them, but yeah, that would, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, certainly. Let me just. Yeah, Taylor, you could pretty much find elves. Yeah. Yeah, sovereignty is the domain of nobility, and it is basically the ability to speak and have people be forced to listen. Yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah. Something that is worth mentioning is that I would definitely like you each to focus in on who your mortal character is at the beginning as much or more than your Fey side. Correct. But what I'm talking about is your correct. What I'm saying is your whereas in like whereas in the mage game, for example, you were taken out of your normal day-to-day lives and put into a situation as mages. In changeling, although you might be referred to as a household, you might still all have your own separate houses and your own 9 to 5 jobs and possibly a family, who knows what else, living your mortal lives, but then meeting up to do things as Fae. Um, yeah. So I mean, it may very well be that um, you end up having issues where you're trying to balance. You know, we're supposed to go be, we need to go slay a dragon, but I'm supposed to be at work in an hour and a half. These are situations in Changeling that will come up and will matter. I mean, I will give you this much that because I've already mentioned Disney as a setting that will come up in the game. I will go ahead and tell you that events will transpire towards the beginning of the game that are going to mean that you will be basically taking holiday from work in wherever you are, whether we end up setting the game in Los Angeles or New York or Texas or wherever. And yeah, but basically you will be taking, say, 2 weeks holiday from work to go to Disney to do what needs to happen there. And it may very well then come into play that at the end of that 2 week period, you're thinking, okay, there's still a lot of stuff that we really want to do here, but we're due back at work. You know, and that might be something that needs to come into play. That you need to figure out how you balance that stuff. And that will be a major component of the game. Because if you do nothing but go to work as a changeling, the banality of normal life will basically destroy your changeling self. But by the same token, if you get lost in the dream and never go back to the normal world, you'll get lost in the dream and drift away into the dreaming somewhere, never to be seen again. Hmm. Yes, that is possible. Yeah, but the thing is, even if your job is something that you really enjoy and that you don't gain banality from your job, the act of having a mortgage and paying bills and grocery shopping, those are all still things. Those are all still elements that are going to gain you banality and anchor you. Those are still normal things. Do you see what I mean? It's when you stop doing any of that and just go adventuring in the dreaming, that you might not come back.
Now, just real quick, being more in the dreaming means you're stronger as a fae, right? As a
Yes,
changeling,
yes,
much
exactly.
stronger.
Yeah.
Because there are changelings who really skirt the line of like
Oh yes. Oh
getting
yes.
there.
Yeah. Especially the higher ranking nobles.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of them actually see the idea of returning to the dreaming as being a worthwhile goal. Um, that to some is a choice. The problem is that while returning to the dreaming to go back to Arcadia is an amazing thing, returning to the dreaming and then not being able to find Arcadia means that you just die in the dreaming somewhere.
You just wander forever.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
So that's the balance that you have to strike. I have run games before where the group basically dove headlong into the dreaming and tried to find Arcadia. But
They're still out there.
at some point, you realize you don't know your way back anymore, and um, there is actually a point where even an SU can't find their way back. It's a lot deeper in. It's a lot deeper in, but it does get there. Especially if they've been going in deeper and deeper with the intent of going deeper, because then their sense is still pointing them deeper rather than out. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to consider there as far as balance. But I would like you each to kind of, before you really dig too deep, I mean, yeah, figure out what kith you want to be, and kind of get an idea for like the personality of your character. But then before you start doing stats or skills or anything like that, um, think about who your person is. Because bear in mind that you were immortal for any number of years before becoming a changeling. You were born human, you grew up human, and sometime between the age of 12 and 20, some moment of inspiration hit you, and it all came washing over you like the ocean, and you remembered who you are. Yeah, that kind of thing. A lot of gravitate towards positions like that. CEOs, managers, politicians, anything like that. Any kind of position of authority. Yep. Yeah, certainly.
That would be cool. I mean,
I mean, there is a background, I believe, called fame.
yeah, that would be kind of cool. Yeah, there is. Well, if we're going by old world, then yeah. If the rules are the same, I don't know.
Yeah, I think fame is a mundane one that's shared across all of the old world of darkness.
Yeah, if the general mundane one are there, then yeah. How are we employed by like Tay? Like, do we choose him or does he choose us? And if he does, do we have a right to refuse or like
Well,
what's the process there?
right. The process there is that when a commoner wants to associate themselves with a court, they must do so by swearing an oath to a noble, and that noble must then accept their oath. Now, that means that at some point along the line, you chose to offer yourself to Taylor's house.
Yeah. So we also have to. So yeah, so we pledge ourselves to his house, but not necessarily to him.
Correct. But if he is the person who is leading that household, or even if he's not, if one of the other people in his household um, has basically, who is leading the household, has said, you know, you are going to be serving him, then at that point, because you've pledged yourself to the house, that's what you're doing. Now, there are ways for a commoner to divorce themselves from a noble house. The thing to remember about that is that in most cases, that also means that you lose the support of the court and become courtless.
What's that?
Well, it
Well,
means,
I know what it means, but like, what does it imply?
well, if you are a member of a court, then all freeholds must grant you safe passage. So all of the places of power for changelings, the fairy glades, the places where you can actually go and absorb glamour. If you think mage terms, if you think nodes, these places will grant you passage because you are a member of a noble house. If you are not a member of a court, they're free to slam the door in your face and completely ignore that you exist. You basically you lose your rights as a member of changeling society because you're just a commoner without a house. So the commoners need a house to function within changeling society. Now, you can still interact with other changelings as part of mortal society if you're not a member of a house, but you have no standing in changeling society if you're not a member of a house. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but Casey, would that imply that if that a noble house can't really do without commoners either?
Oh, completely.
Yeah. No, 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 you can't have nobility without commoners. It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
If everyone's nobility, then nobody's noble. If
yeah,
everyone's commoners, then
Well,
nobody's
no, but
noble.
just the concept of nobility would exist. It just
Yeah,
yeah.
doesn't.
that's
And that's actually, if you watch any of the videos, if you go back and look at them, that's why the Ascension War ended. Is they finally came to a deal because they realized that they actually needed each other. Um, that was finally the straw that ended the war. Was when they realized that we can't kill off the nobles because we'd have to completely start over and build a new society. But they can't kill us off because they need us to be nobles. You know, and that was eventually that was the basis of what finally ended the Ascension War. Um, so yeah, I think the main thing to look at now is I know Doc's looking at playing either an ogre or a troll. Taylor's looking at playing a she. Jamie's said she's playing a puka. Um, so really, it's just kind of deciding what everyone else wants to play.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the thing that I can't pronounce. It's like Clurichan.
Clarishan,
Clurichan.
yeah. Think leprechaun.
Yeah, yeah, no, I've seen the video and I read about it and
Yeah,
I really like them.
they're fun.
Yeah.
I love being able to walk into a room anywhere and start a fight.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
Character's gonna like you, man. With this group that we've basically decided on,
Uh huh.
is there any reason for me to be a member of the Wild Hunt at all? Yeah, I think we've already mentioned that, didn't we? Already asked him. You can, yeah, any
Yeah,
individual member can be part of it. All of them don't have to.
yeah, but that would imply that either we would have, like, Doc and Casey would have a single session one-on-one, or that we don't do anything for half a session while they are doing the
Yeah.
wild hunt.
Or it could be a part of my downtime.
Yeah.
You couldn't help explain why Doc won't be here for some of them.
Yeah. I mean that's something to consider as well.
It's where I won't be able to be there.
Yeah. If the timing is a thing, I mentioned in one of the videos already, but um, because of the way that Changeling is balanced, it is very possible to, if a player is missing for part of a session, as long as we've not ended the previous session mid-scene, it's quite easy enough to say, we're all meeting at 8 at so and so freehold, but you know Taylor won't be here for a few hours because he's still at work. That can actually be the in-game explanation of it, or it could be, you know, Doc is actually,
Last half an hour.
yeah, Doc's actually been summoned by the hunt, and that's why he's not here. And then we could deal with that either on another night or through text or whatever.
And if I go to CEO and I can just have a business call I have to take.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's
I just go find someplace private and take the call.
yeah, exactly.
It could be a meeting. I mean, and I'm like, no, I'm on vacation, but we really need you. Oh.
Yeah.
And then I go take the call.
Are the lane kids ever allowed in the unsealy court?
Sorry.
Are Thalian kids or Thalian, however you pronounce it, allowed in the unsealy court?
Yeah. Just I don't. You might not have watched the video yet, but something that I do, which is based on some of the literature, and it's not purely by the books. But the way that I run the Thalane kiths is I don't actually run them as a separate thing. So basically, the bogies are the Thalane version of the Sluagh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way that I actually run it is that a bogey may actually introduce themselves as a Sluagh. They may consider themselves to be Sluagh, but they are a Sluagh that um, has been influenced in certain ways that mean that they are in fact differently talented.
Mm-hmm.
I run them as aspects of the same kith, not as their own separate kiths. Especially when you start getting into houses like Baelor, where they're tainted anyway.
Yeah.
The Thalane kiths would be a perfect fit there because that could be a manifestation of that taint. I also run that a lot of the kiths are these Sluagh themselves in my games are actually a lot closer to what's described as bogies in the main books. I feel that the Sluagh, well, I feel that a lot of them are, but the Sluagh especially have been so over sanitized that they don't fit the original mythology anymore. I mean, the Sluagh were supposed to be beings of nightmares that literally, if you saw their true form, you would go insane. And that the imagery that you see of the shadow is actually not the fact that they're shadows, but it's the fact that your mind is blanking them out into a shadow, because if your mind saw the truth, you would lose it. You know, and in the main book, the Sluagh have been so over over sanitized that they're just like kind of emo goth whisperers. That's not how I run them.
Mm-hmm.
So I run the actual Sluagh a lot closer to bogies. There also will be a few thematic changes. I don't think they'll necessarily come into play, but I've mentioned them in a couple places already. Like the hags are part of the wild hunt as well. There are also a couple, I guess you could say, sub races that I include that are a bit custom. such as a group called Night Flyers, which consider themselves to be Sluagh, but they are descended from nightmares of the night. They have a little bit more trouble passing as human, but they gain some additional abilities in exchange, such as the ability to fly, which is handy. Yes, it's also very hard to disguise. So that kind of thing I will cover, and the Sluagh video is one I've not gotten to yet. So I'll cover it in there. I also cover. I also, when I talk about trolls, I'm going to cover the fact that I handle them a bit differently as well, which is part of the explanation as to why they are unseelie. Because the kind of ultra honorable troll, as you see them depicted in the book, you would think should be seelie. But actually, as I've mentioned to Doc, most of them were seelie until they failed in their mission and got themselves kicked out of the seelie court, and found that the unseelie were the only ones that would let them that would take them in. And then over time in the unseelie court, they've been corrupted slightly by things. Also, if anyone decides to play a red cap, there will be a couple. Well, there are some Kith-specific merits for all of the Kiths that I will post in the near future that I'm just finalizing now.
I just had a random thought of a character we haven't talked about in like 6 months.
What's that?
Dugan Red
Ah, he
Hammer.
he would be a knocker. Most definitely a knocker.
I like Dugan.
Yeah, I love knockers. So Jamie's expression there said it all. I actually made that joke in the video, though.
Jamie probably made that expression then too.
Probably, yeah. Or she hasn't watched the video, one or the other. No, Jamie's been slacking, hasn't been watching the videos.
So if we, because just as you said, if we don't focus on the whole stats and shit like that, but just about the characters, we should start with the human and then figure out what kind of Fae would fit that, or
Well,
what kind of
I, I,
Just make your kids because
yeah, I am fine if you pick your kith, and then pick a human to suit the sensibilities of that kith. I'm fine with that. My order that I would recommend that you do is pick a kith, decide kind of the overarching type of changeling you want to be, red cap or Clarishon or Sluagh or whatever. Have a kind of a look at what their general personality traits are as a whole, and then from there figure what kind of human would have become one of these. And then build your human, your age, your job, your likes, your interests. Build up the human character, and then once you know the human character and you know the kith, then you can start figuring out what their stats and skills and things would be like. But what I'm saying is that the human aspect is as important as the kith before you do stats. And I will be doing a video probably Wednesday, no, probably Thursday or Friday about character creation. Once I've finished with the kiths, which I've got Sluagh, Troll, maybe one or two others. Once I've done that, then my next one is I'm going to do a character creation video, and then I'm going to go back and talk about the Thalane kiths.
when are you covering arts and realms and all of that?
Probably just after the Thalane. Because I think I'll probably do the Thalane as either one video or possibly a set of videos that I do all on the same day. Like if you notice the last couple of times I've uploaded like 5 or 6 videos in a day
Yeah.
doing the kiths. I might try to do that again this weekend. And then after that I'll do the arts and realms. Just very quickly to cover on that though, just as a general concept. Arts and realms work very much like spheres in Mage. The difference is that arts are what you're doing, and realms are what you're doing it to.
Say again.
Arts are what you're doing, realms are what you're doing it to. So the art of Chronos could be applied to the realm of Fae, which means you're affecting the time of Fae creatures.
But so then someone who has, say, actor would be able to affect our fate.
Correct. Actor is mortals.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Scene affects an area. It affects a scene. So you basically you're going to pick one art and one realm, or possibly one art and multiple realms when you're casting a spell.
And why, for example, wouldn't you pick a scene? Why wouldn't you not pick scene, for example, instead of
That's
actor
what
or
I was
fate?
gonna ask.
Yeah, because in that case, scene would say, well, whatever is in front of me.
Um, because it's less effective.
Okay.
Scene allows you to affect a broader range of things, but it's going to take you a lot more successes to affect a scene with an actor and a Fae and something else in it than it would if you specifically targeted Fae. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
You're trading a bit of general purpose use or a lot of focused use.
Mm. So you could come into a situation where you just aren't like, okay, I have power to detect pyro shit. I can do fireballs, but I can't do it to the changeling who's attacking me.
You could, yeah. There is also a concept of unleashing. Okay, and this is something I'll cover later on in more depth as well. But unleashing is basically when you say, I'm going to take this art, and instead of trying to control it, I'm going to just let it rip. And you make a general kind of one line, 3 to 5 word statement to the dreaming of what you want that art to accomplish and let go of it. And let the dreaming decide what's going to happen with it. You know,
You
it.
can let the DM decide.
Well, the dreaming and the DM are one and the same. But I mean, it could be that you unleash pyrotechnics and say, destroy my foe.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what shape that pyrotechnic is going to take. But the dreaming is basically just going to pour pyrotechnic into the area to destroy your foe.
And that could theoretically mean bringing it into you as well.
Well, yeah, it could in theory mean burn everything, because that will destroy your foe. That's the
I've been so close.
that's the danger of unleashing.
Well, you're doing so close to that building. Why did you
Yeah,
burn it down?
yeah, that's the danger of unleashing. Unleashing will allow you to do things that your normal arts and realms will not let you do, but it does it at a risk.
It's uncontrollable.
Yes,
That's the point of it.
yeah, that's why it's called unleashing.
So, Taylor, considering you are kind of going to pick this team, like in character later, what kind of character are you doing?
couldn't imagine having a saint as an unseelie anyway.
As far as like human goes, in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'll do what Kim. I'll do what Kim did in Mage. I have a lot of money. I run a company. It's a ledger.
Yeah, Tim.
What else would I call it? Play Kim, pretty much.
Sister Clarkson.
Hmm. Yeah. So,
Maybe
um,
slightly more ruthless Kim as far as corporations go.
I see
That
that
could be possible. I don't know Kim that well.
I see that a few of you have joined the game, but not all of you.
Oh, did you drop the link?
I dropped the link,
Yeah,
but
it's in the chat.
Oh,
yeah,
I see it.
Oh, sorry.
So let me. Yeah, I did too.
Missed that.
That's right when I asked for those lorry
People have
names.
been spamming pictures.
yeah. I wonder who.
No one was spamming.
Oh, so Taylor, that's not your name there. Okay, never mind.
I know I sent one.
That could be enough to be
I
spam.
don't know why Batman would call up MT sent me spam. Unless you're saving the good one for yourself.
Quick, someone change your name to someone else, and then start saying I like cum, and then screenshot it so they can never take it away. Easy trick.
I like doing that in web browsers because you go into forums, go to the dev tools, and edit user names.
Where the hell is this thing? Oh, there.
Yeah, I mean,
No, that was not the link.
Casey. I saw the randomized name because these
Oh, there.
White Roll 20 hosts the sheet. I'm like, oh yeah, that nice 5D shape sheet. Now I'm like, oh. I
No,
really like
this sheet is fucking terrible. To be honest,
Yeah, there's not a good changeling sheet.
it is just.
It's not.
Could have made it a little bit better.
Yeah, it's not. It's not the worst sheet I've ever seen, but it's maybe in the top 5 worst.
Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you full screen the sheet, you can't read the palettes.
I just select the alt tab and just scroll down. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, God.
Oh my god. No, this sheet literally scales in horrendous ways. Seriously, I want everyone to do this.
Don't
Domino,
bring have
window,
any
gently
other-
click one side and just start dragging it and watch how it tries to cope. It's great.
Yeah, no, there's literally not a better.
Hang on, is that a fucking vector? Ugh. No, that's not a vector image. I thought they actually put one there.
In case,
Hmm?
after I learn HTML, I will attempt making a better changeling sheet. This is a travesty.
It's not necessarily actually even HTML that it uses.
Look at it, it's based in HTML.
It's based there, but it's not pure HTML.
I have no basic knowledge for it anyway.
Hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, once I done that, I'll give it a whirl, but I'll need a premium account, but I'm hoping to have a job by then.
Yeah.
Work for a nice premium account if I have, if that's
The thing is, I have the account. I just literally have not had the time to mess with the sheet. Because my goal is to at some point have a classic sheet that would allow you to build any type of World of Darkness character.
oh, just a basic generic sheet.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if you think about it, the physical, social, mental are all the same. The talents, skills, and knowledges are close to the same. There's like 2/3 of them that all of them share, and then 1/3 of them that some groups get and other groups don't. Like you'll notice on the changeling sheet, I believe there's something called kenning.
Yeah, and Grimaire?
Grimmar, yeah.
Is that magics or something?
Grimmar is kind of like a cult, but for changelings. It's like the lore of changelings. But then there's lore itself, which is different. Um, yeah, so like I said, you'll notice that like 2/3 of the skills are all the same, but then there's just a few that are not. And then you get down to obviously the backgrounds are all the same. The arts realms or spheres or whatever, that's the hardest part.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because they function differently.
Well, I mean,
There's
what you could do, you could.
I would,
What I would do, I would just make a basic sheet. You know, I have a
Mhm.
little tab, and you go in that tab, and there's three options, and it would just be the
Yeah,
options for the different kinds of games, and it would just change the words. It wouldn't need to change much else.
yeah, exactly. And then like in this one you have glamour, willpower, and banality, rather than having arete, willpower. Um,
I was gonna recommend you put like just a tab that you could really kind of intuitively switch to.
Well, that's what I'm
Just
saying. You
there.
like, do I want to play mage? Okay, I click the mage button, and
Yeah.
it converts to a sheet.
yeah,
Boom. It's just a tab that has the different kinds of games you can play, and it just converts it.
the best way that I've seen to do it would be to check the shaped D&D sheet.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
The
The way
code
it converts to.
in PC,
Yep.
the way that the code that they use to swap between PC and PC is the code that I would think would need to be used for this.
That's probably what I'd use. It would just be a little, either a slide bar or just a checkbox.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
A sidebar would look nicer, but a check marks would probably be smarter.
yeah, or a drop down even.
Yeah, but I like drop downs, but at the same time, I don't like them.
Yeah,
Drop downs might work, but
or a single selection radial menu would probably be the ideal.
Guys, I think we kind of got off track here.
Yeah, well, we did. Yeah,
I like programming.
No, they are talking about cheats and other stuff we don't care about.
yeah. So I think the next step, everyone kind of, it sounds like, has some kind of an idea of what they're wanting to do,
Seeker.
other than Kim and Seeger, we've not heard from.
No, Kim wanted to be a chef.
Still thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh, but his actual.
So Kim, you want to be a well-known a celebrity chef.
Yeah, pretty much. But I have no clue about what kind of idea.
I could recommend you probably maybe focus on Bogan,
Okay.
or it's gonna sound strange, but knockers.
I was literally about to say you can make like chimerical food. What is knockers?
Knockers are traditionally seen as engineers, but if you look back at any kind of historical fairy tales of like gnomes coming in the night to build things or to make things, well, they could. That's what I'm saying. Is have you ever heard the fairy tale of the shoemaker,
Yeah.
where he left all of the materials out and he came back in the morning and all of the shoes were made? The ones that would be doing that would be knockers. That's the dreams that they came from. They are phenomenal engineers, crafters. They can just make things work. They can build things. As long as they're not being observed, they can work like 3 times faster than normal. They can make things work that shouldn't necessarily even really work. They can sometimes intimidate things into working, even if they shouldn't work. They can,
Really work for me.
yeah, they can literally beat an oven into working right. Um,
Love it.
um,
Knocker mechanic would be fantastic.
oh yeah, that's a very common
Hands on it with a wrench.
that's a very common archetype. Their flaw is often um, that they swear a lot, they curse, they are quite foul tongued often, and
Oh my god. Kim is Gordon
yeah,
Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay would be a brilliant example of a knocker chef. The swearing, the yelling, and all of this, and then it just comes out and it's amazing.
It's why you never liked food. It's because it's not chimerical.
Yeah. The theme of the game Disney is not necessarily the theme,
That's
but just to give um, a little bit of guidance on kind of where the game is going to go, is that you will be from somewhere. That is going to be up to the group to determine whether you want to be from Los Angeles, from Sacramento, from New York. Pick a city that you will be basing your mortal lives in. And
okay. That's fair.
something will happen. I'm not going to give away what yet, but something will happen, and your court, which it sounds like is going to be the Unseelie Court, is going to send you to
It's Disney.
entreat the court at Disney World.
Hmm.
Now, I mentioned in one of the videos, it could be that you're trying to make a political alliance with them, or it could be that you already have a political alliance and they're asking for help, or you already have an alliance and they've stopped communicating. I'm not giving away the exact mechanism of the game yet, but you are going to be sent from where you are to there to solve a problem. And initially, you are going to have a 2 week period where you've all taken time off work to go accomplish this mission. At the end of that period, you are then going to have to work out if you have either accomplished the mission and can go back to your normal lives, or you have not accomplished the mission, but you still need to go back to your lives, or you have not accomplished the mission and you need to make some other excuse for why you're not back at work yet. So
So
that,
no one would have the luxury of not being back at work.
yeah. So that is kind of where the initial game is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Like what I was asking more about theme was more for what kind. Like if this was a vampire game, I would know that the theme would be okay. A lot of people are going to die,
hmm
like just innocent humans. But
Changeling is very much a game of extremes. It is a system where you have the possibility of amazing, wonderful, fantastic things happening, and you also have the realization that the world is slowly growing colder, and dreams are fading, and you're on a slow decline into oblivion. And Changeling are trying to find the balance between gaining power, inspiring the world to dream again, and surviving if winter does come. Does that make sense for theming? Okay, if you imagine that the changelings are creatures of dreams, when people have hopes and dreams and ambitions and they're looking forward to the future and what amazing things can happen in the future, changelings feed off of that and they prosper. But when people get bogged down in the day to day drudgery of life and just go to work and come home and eat and sleep and do the weekly shop and go back to work again and kind of never look up from the grindstone of normal life, they stop dreaming, and that deprives changeling of what they need to live. Changelings begin to fade. The world has been in a slow decline for hundreds of years, to the point that whereas it used to be that there were massive pathways opening up in the dream that would lead into the deep dreaming to Arcadia and to these great cities of imagination, the roads have decayed and faded and closed, and no one can find their way back to the dream.
that's more of the theme of the world. But
hmm
thinking like us.
Well, us
And
is like we want to return, don't we?
sure,
Like
Yeah.
Well, that is a question for the group: is do you want to be a set of changelings that are hoping to inspire the world enough to find your way back into the dreams, or are you a group of survivors that are just basically not bothered about the dream but just trying to survive the day? Are you?
I personally would rather be a survivor than a changeling, but
Which, for the Autopsy, it seems they are the more survivor types. Because they actually chose to stay behind with everyone else.
No, no, they didn't.
The Autumn,
Oh, autumn she. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
the
the
autumn.
Autumn ones did, and that's
No,
what I asked.
the autumn she aren't the survivors. Those are the idealists who stayed behind. The Arcadian she. Those are the survivors because
They
they.
got the hell out. Yeah,
Yeah.
they got to safety, and then what?
To go back more than
all of them
Oh,
want to stay behind.
the Arcadians, she want to go back probably more than anyone. You're right, um, but they don't necessarily care about everyone else. If they can find their way back, they're gonna take it.
So,
Because that's
question:
what they did last time.
the the way to the way to Arcadia opened up for just a split second when the moon landing happened, right?
Yep. Well, actually, it
How
was
is it?
a couple hours, but yeah.
Well, how is it that um there are changelings just curing cancer and doing like a knocker who creates a machine that instantly teleports someone because he can do that. These changelings can do that. How are they not just introducing this stuff to society and saying, "I've just cured cancer. Everyone be amazed." And
Yeah,
everyone's
people like
amazed.
start dreaming again. Like, oh, we can now cure all
Holy shit, we
disease.
can live forever. Like we've extended our life 100 years.
The
Why
the
is that?
the thing that you run into, the thing that you run into, is you have a knocker that develops a cure for cancer and applies it, and someone is cured, and people are amazed, and people start to think, "Oh my God, anything's possible." But then there are enough people that are so mired in banality that the next thing you hear is, "Oh, it must have been a fake. Oh no, that didn't really happen. Oh
But he
well,
can
no,
reproduce it on a mass scale, though.
that he can't though because the amount of
No, I'm saying every single changeling. How
Mhm.
are they not doing this?
no, that this is what I'm saying is that the amount of glamour that it would take to do that and to make it real rather than chimerical, they've so far found that it would take more glamour than what they have left to introduce something that big. There have been moments where they've managed to do some things. They've managed to introduce some cures. They've managed to, you know, make some impossible event happen. You know,
Yeah, I'm thinking polio, for
Stopping
example.
stopping the Black Plague would probably be like a historical event that
yeah,
a changeling might have done.
yeah. Well, actually, I agree with the example, but historically, the Black Plague was actually the changeling's fault.
I kind of figured that, to be honest, but
The Black Plague was actually the changelings succumbing to banality, and it was one of the major cullings where like 80% of the changelings died.
Okay, guys, let me rephrase my question. Are we good guys, bad guys, or somewhere in between? I think.
that's a question you gotta ask yourself, dude. Like, you're creating
Okay.
your own character. We're not.
Yeah, I know, but if
I think he's saying the
someone
group as a whole.
yeah, and if this was D&D and someone picked chaotic evil and another picked lawful good, we would last one session.
Well, I think you have all decided unseelie,
Yes.
which means that you are more chaotic than lawful.
Yes.
You are more self-serving than selfless. But that's not to say that you won't work together, because in a lot of cases, me helping you means you're going to help me, and that means I'm going to be better off. You see what I mean?
I mean, the entire like to me, it doesn't really seem like the changelings would fight. They would all band together as one whole. But I understand that
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the thing that you also have to look at is that the Unseelie court for the most part would happily work with anyone,
Right.
but the Seelie court thinks they're better than that. The Seelie court think that the Unseelie are not good enough. They're not pure enough. They're not. They're crass. They're unclean. They're basically they're just not worth dealing with, and it's mainly because of the prejudices of the Seelie King.
Alright, I gotta head out.
Yeah, it's closing time anyway, but something to think about. Um, and we'll have some more chats through the week and moving into next week.
one last question: Are
Yep.
assassins ever brought into houses
Oh yeah,
in Sealy Court?
most houses have them.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, that's not uncommon for either side, really. The Sealy Court wouldn't necessarily call them assassins; they'd call them something else, but they still have them.
Juice.
Yeah, yeah. All right, guys. I will see you all later on.